Hello everyone, did you have a good lunch? Did you have some coffee or will you be sleeping during the presentation? I will try to keep you entertained, right? So I'll be speaking about how the U.S. Forest Service thinks about recreation increasingly as our focus areas have changed and the role that recreation management plays for us in the ecosystem services context. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. So what I find really interesting is that even though we were initially established to protect timber and water supplies for the American public, one of our very first landscape architects in 1919 articulated the importance of recreation. And just maybe perhaps you can indulge me in reading this quote. "Perhaps the rebuilding of the body and spirit is the greatest service derivable from our forests. For what worth are material things if we lose the character and quality of people that are the soul of America?" So our first landscape architect articulated this in 1919, and I think it's just a very powerful reminder of the importance that natural lands, forest lands play, as Todd mentioned, in national identity and sense of belonging to a community. So just a little background on the role of recreation in the U.S. Oh, do I have to? Okay, thank you. So putting this together was a great education for me because I learned about the amazing use of National Forest System lands. So National Forest System lands in the U.S. are just under 80 million hectares, and we receive over 161 million visits per year. So most of the people who come to the forest lands come for recreation. And these uses really vary from hiking and wildlife viewing to hunting. So tremendous diversity. So recreation is really how the American public connects with the National Forest System in the U.S. Okay, sorry guys, technical difficulties. So some things that we consider in recreation management include what should we offer and where should we offer it and what should the diversity of those offerings be? What are the conditions of the landscape that are required to provide those needs, those recreation opportunities? What can the land handle ecologically? What kind of impacts or use can the land handle? And because we're a multiple use organization, if we also have to do timber harvest and grazing management, how do we balance that with recreational use? And who else in our landscape is offering recreation opportunities? We don't want to compete with them, but we want to take advantage of working in collaboration with them. So increasingly, the Forest Service is trying to figure out how to manage recreation sustainably. So, what does that mean? What does a sustainable recreation mean? So balancing what's good for the land, what's good for people, so also avoiding conflicts among different kinds of user groups, and having recreation infrastructure that we can actually afford to manage. I mean, in the US, the Forest Service budget is declining, unfortunately. So how can we be strategic about the kinds of recreation opportunities we offer so they can be positive ones that we can sustain over time? So another foundational principle of our recreation is to connect people with their heritage, both prior to European settlement and post-European settlement, and to also share knowledge across different kinds of user groups and across user groups and the Forest Service. So in terms of our cultural heritage resources, in the US, Native American tribes are sovereign governments, so we consult with them as sovereign governments. And there's many of resources that are important to them that occur on National Forest System land. So traditional food sources, sacred sites, ceremonies, and traditions. Todd mentioned the importance of salmon to the identity of many Native American tribes in the region where we work. And there are certain landscape features like volcanoes, this is Mount St. Helens, that are important to the history of many of these tribal communities. So that's a big part of our work is working with the Native American tribes on sustaining these resources. The second is working with really diverse constituencies on how their identity relates to the national forests. So for some of them, there's family traditions that are a big part of who they are that occur on national forest system lands. There's certain features on the landscape that help to define their connection to place or their sense of home. This is my home because this feature is here. Or there's historical sites that we maintain because it's part of our American culture to refer back to what we've done in the past, what we've built in the past. So just like in any management conundrum or setting or situation, it's important to understand what is the niche of our place. So what makes us unique? What do we provide that others don't provide? How can we build our sense of identity? So what uses occur in this place? What do people value? What is really specific about here, this place? And how can we possibly define a quality recreation experience? I mean, some people want to be in their recreation vehicles close to each other, close to amenities. Some people want to be by themselves in a very wild and natural setting. So it's subjective, like what it means to recreate. So the Forest Service needs to present a spectrum of opportunities to provide for various different kinds of needs. So we commonly use something called the Recreation Opportunity Spectrum, which was established in the 1970s. We still refer to this thinking today. And a recreation opportunity setting is defined as the combination of physical, biological, and social and managerial conditions that give value to a place. There's different components of this. Some of it is what nature provides, so the vegetation or natural features that are in this place. Some of it is the level of use. Are there many people here? Are there very few people here? And third is the degree to which we offer infrastructure, like roads and facilities. So natural elements, use elements, and management elements. And part of what we're trying to do as well is not simply offer what people ask, but also to increase their awareness about new kinds of experiences they might have that perhaps they're not aware of. So these are the factors within the recreation opportunity spectrum that we try to address. So access. Some people want to get to a place very easily, very quickly on a paved road. Other people actually want it to be quite difficult to reach the place where they're recreating. Do people want to have a sense of closeness to home or being very, very far away from home? To what degree is the landscape disturbed or impacted by human action? Are there facilities there that people can easily access so that they feel comfortable? Or maybe they deliberately do not want any of those facilities to be there. Do they want to see people? Do they not? And is this a site that can sustain impact? Or maybe we want to focus impacts on one place rather than have dispersed impacts that affect all kinds of different habitats and different settings. So the nature, those combination of factors affect the experience that someone has. So some people want to be solitary and they want to have a sense of risk and self-reliance. And some people want to feel secure and comfortable and they want to feel close to others. So most national forest plans include these 6 classes of recreation, from primitive and very remote to urban and lots of social connection, to try to get at this spectrum of ways that people experience being in nature. So in addition to these decisions the Forest Service can make, we also manage lands that are designated by Congress. So Congress actually establishes wilderness areas, wild and scenic rivers, places of historical significance, or national monuments such as Sequoia National Monument, which the sequoia is the largest tree on Earth and it happens to grow in California. So this is a place by presidential decree that is a national monument. So the Forest Service doesn't decide this, but we do manage these lands. So this is an example of a recreation opportunity spectrum map. from the Coconino National Forest in Arizona. So you're not intended to be able to decipher this. It's just an example of what these maps sometimes look like in forest plans. So now getting to, we have personal connections with landscapes, personal reasons why we want to recreate. And increasingly, there's a lot of interest in the economic benefits of recreation, particularly given the numbers of people in the US who recreate on federal lands. And we're finding that for every dollar invested in Forest Service recreation, the GDP receives a $33 contribution. So it's a tremendous impact. From 2008 to 2012, Forest Service recreation visitors contributed an average of $11 billion annually to the US economy. It's absolutely phenomenal in terms of tourist resources, outfitters and guides, lodging, petrol stations. It's really quite a dramatic impact, and this is just being understood within the U.S. Forest Service. We've had such a focus on timber for so long that we're now really coming to understand the impact of recreation in these communities. We're also finding that our special use authorizations, such as our relationships with outfitters and guides or organized tours, and they're incredibly valuable to the private sector. They're worth about $2 billion to the private sector. So this is really huge. This is something that many Forest Service employees don't think about. They manage these authorizations, but there isn't a lot of awareness of their economic importance. And so increasingly, I've noticed as well that there's growing interest in the public health benefits of recreation, both physical health and mental health. A lot of papers being written about this. The health insurance industry in the U.S. is actually approaching the Forest Service with interest in investing in recreation opportunities because of the public health benefits. Reduction in stress and anxiety, enhancing our ability to connect with others, especially in this information age. Having social experiences on the national forests are really, really powerful. And speaking on behalf of an organization that is facing declining budgets, we're really looking to volunteers and partnerships. And it's interesting, as our social scientists have been meeting with volunteers and speaking with them about their experience, volunteerism on the National Forest System is tremendously beneficial for the agency, but it's also beneficial for those who volunteer on our lands. They feel a stronger sense of connection both to the land itself and to the agency. So that's something that we're beginning to consider in a different way, not just what we benefit from volunteerism, but the stronger connection that creates with our communities. So just in closing, I thought I'd reference John Weir, who is tremendously important in U.S. natural resource management history. He was a peer of Gifford Pinchot, our first chief, and of Roosevelt, who helped create the national park system. And I have a fairly lengthy quote here, but I think it's a powerful one. And this was occurring, post, as the U.S. was becoming more industrialized and greater recognition of the importance of recreation. So thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home, that wilderness is a necessity, and that parks and reservations are useful not only as fountains of timber and irrigating rivers, but as fountains of life. So I think there's a real interest in returning to this idea in recreation in the U.S. And just on a personal note, this is a place where I recreated in Oregon. I had a really busy week at work, and I woke up on Saturday morning and I thought, I think I have to go to the woods. And so I just got in my car and I went to this place and I found a little area to hike by the river. This is on the Gifford Pinchot National Forest in Oregon. And it's been really dramatic to me. Just one forest supervisor in the U.S. refers to recreation as recreation. So it's kind of, the translation in English might be that I'm recreating myself, I'm making myself anew by going to the woods. So this was a weekend that I particularly remembered. It was a difficult one, and I felt rejuvenated after being in the woods in Oregon. So I think many people have very strong personal connections with being outside, and that's how we become interested in natural resource management as professionals. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions, or I know recreation is extremely important here in Israel, maybe we can have a dialogue about how you're addressing this in an ecosystem services context.